Welcome to Abundance. You guessed it, a podcast dedicated to all things surrounding dance. I am Kristen.
And I am Hannah, and we are two best friends who are brought together by this art form.
Please join us in 5, 6, 7, 8.
Hello, everyone. So today we are doing a continuation on our college dance series, and we're going one step further to talk about master's degrees in dance as well as Ph.D.s. Now, I don't have current experience with a master's degree, but my good friend Kristen does. So I'm going to ask her some questions, and hopefully you can gain some more insight and information on what it's like to get your master's degree in dance. So today I want to start off by asking Kristen, how is your master's different from your bachelor's degree? And can you tell us how your workload might be different, your rehearsals, maybe your friendships, your relationships with your professors? Just talk about some similarities and differences between your bachelor's versus your master's.
All right, Hannah, that's a really great question. So for those of you who maybe don't know or haven't listened to our previous episodes, I am currently getting my M.A. at NYU, New York University, with the American Ballet Theater teaching certification, so their national training curriculum. I'm working towards getting the full certification. I am at this point already certified to teach in levels pre-primary through 3, and I'm working on completing the rest. So my experiences so far have been pretty incredible in this master's program. I truly love it. Even though we are doing things remotely, it's still been a really, really great experience. There definitely are some noticeable differences, though, between my time at Mercyhurst and my time now here at NYU. There's definitely a lot less dancing in my degree right now. So while it is a master's in dance, it's also a master's in dance education, whereas a BFA is more centered around performing. If you are interested in performing more, an MFA might be a better option for you. But that being said, there still are some performance opportunities within my program. So I am working right now to choreograph a piece for a class of concert prep, which will actually be presented on stage in April. We will be live streaming this event as NYU doesn't seem to feel comfortable yet with having people in a theater. And typically in past years, there would also have been I believe, faculty concert in the fall and just a few different other opportunities in which students could audition and be a part of those concerts. So I am looking forward to putting a piece on stage, as well as I'm going to be dancing in kind of this joint choreographer's piece as well. In terms of workload, it's a lot. And it was a lot in undergrad too, as Hannah and I have talked about in the past. But I would say it's a different kind of load. So during our undergrad, we talked about, we were spending so many hours in the studio, and then we had our liberal arts reach curriculum that we had to fulfill. So in a master's program, you don't need to do any kind of outside classes in terms of, a math or a science if it doesn't pertain to what you're getting your degree in. And like I mentioned, there's a lot less physical dancing. So I'm not spending as many hours maybe in the studio rehearsing till 10 o'clock at night, things like that we did during our undergrad. But I'm spending a lot more time behind my computer screen, typing essays, and I'm shocked by how many group projects there are. Actually, there's a lot of group projects that we've had to do, and readings. Some of the readings can be really, really lengthy, kind of dense to work through. But I think that should be expected at a master's level, but it was more of just a difference I noticed having gone straight from my undergrad to graduate school. That being said, just in terms of the overall relationships I have with people, there's a lot more diversity in my program than there was in undergrad in all respects. But one of the ones I want to highlight is age. So Hannah and I, when we were at school together, we were all around the same age. It's pretty typical for undergrad. Perhaps you maybe have someone who's transferred or who's taken a gap year or something like that, where the ages might be off by like a year or two. But in my program now, we have a whole range of ages. I am one of the youngest, as I decided to make that jump right from undergrad, whereas a lot of people are returning from professional careers or are current teachers but looking to kind of become more qualified, whether it be for teaching more in like a higher ed kind of situation or just wanting to be a certified teacher. So that's just something that is different, and not necessarily in a bad or good way, but I do appreciate getting insight and sharing ideas and learning from people with much more diverse backgrounds and experiences.
Wow, it's all very interesting and good to know. I had known some of those things about your program and your experiences, but not nearly as much information as you just covered now. That's all really cool, and I'm glad that you're having such a well-rounded experience, even though it is virtual right now. Going off of that, I did want to ask you how applying for your graduate degree was different from applying for your bachelor's. You know, we talked a lot about the different methods and ways to apply and find the right program for you in our last episode. So I just want you to maybe touch upon that and how it's a little bit different for this time.
Yeah, sure thing. So I would say that I'm sure every program is slightly different in terms of its requirements, and that goes with undergrad and grad programs. For undergraduate, I applied to many different schools, whereas I only chose to apply to NYU, so I don't have that experience of having applied to multiple graduate schools and seeing differences across the board with that. But honestly, overall, the process really wasn't all too different for me. I had to kind of fill out an online application, send in my CV. So I would say that was one difference. With undergrad, you don't really have to send in your CV or even your resume. And I honestly hadn't used a CV for anything else prior to applying for this program. So that was something I had to kind of formulate, or we had started to work on that, I guess, in our senior pro seminar class at Mercyhurst, but I kind of really had to actually put time and energy into it as I would be using it. So on top of, sending in the CV and just answering some pretty basic application questions, I had to send in an audition video to be accepted specifically to the ABT program. So that video was reviewed by ABT faculty separate from my NYU audition. So in a way, it was kind of like getting accepted on both ends, like we talked about with undergraduate, getting accepted into the university and getting accepted into the specific program. Other than that, I had an interview. And
yeah, I just want to say something about the interview. I remember Kristen had a couple of interviews, I think, during that time, and we lived directly together at that point. Senior year, we were roommates. So she would say, Hannah, I need you to not come into the room for like that amount of time. And I was like, okay, no worries. So you definitely had, I would say, a different experience with that, right? Like, it's not like you were interviewing at different undergraduate degree programs. It was more of a difference when you got your master's.
Yeah, I mean, if you remember, we had a small little interview component of our Mercyhurst audition. And really, I think there was only one or two other places that had something similar to that with undergrad. But definitely my interview at NYU was a lot more official than than that kind of informal interview for undergrad.
Right. I remember it just being very legit. You're like, I have to have complete silence and this is a big deal. And I'm like, okay.
Yes.
Okay, well, good to know. Moving on to my next question for you. So why did you specifically decide to apply to NYU as opposed to other graduate schools?
Ooh, that is a great question. So actually, for quite some time, I really wanted to get my master's at the University of Utah. So they offer an M.F.A program, actually. So that's a longer program. And the University of Utah to me had always been kind of a dream school. But certain graduate programs are only looking for returning professionals. So certain graduate programs require you have either X amount of years of performing experience or teaching experience or research or something after you graduate from school. I kind of hit this point in undergrad where I knew I wanted to further my education, and I just didn't feel like I necessarily wanted to wait and take that time, in which case that definitely narrowed down my options of what schools I actually even could apply for. Because had I even attempted to go through and apply to some schools like the University of Utah, I know that I wouldn't have gotten accepted simply because of my age and my experience. So I kind of discovered the NYU program a little bit later on, my time at Mercyhurst, and as you know, Ellen had gone there. And so I did reach out to her some and find out some information about the program and her experience. And I think really what drew me in the moment was the ABT teaching certification and the fact that the program is only a year. So I think this is really unique that I'm getting my master's in just 3 semesters, fall, spring, and summer. And it honestly, in this COVID time, feels very fitting and appropriate, as I know a lot of the other things I hope to do in my career, I wouldn't have been doing to the fullest extent during this time period anyways. And so the timing was kind of just very much right for me. And like I said, the certification was a huge draw because I knew for years that I wanted to gain that certification.
Yeah, I can see how the ABT certification is a really great thing to do on top of the master's degree. It's like you get two things.
Yeah, exactly. It's nice to leave with both, with a teaching certification and a master's degree. And I know that the teacher training programs that ABT offers, just kind of those intensives where you can gain the certifications, are really wonderful as well. But I love that with this program, we are diving much deeper because we have more time to really go into the information and put it to use and put it to practice. So
I also just wanted to just say that although this is the right timing for Kristen, it's not always necessarily going to be the right time for you, depending on what experiences and other opportunities you may have. As she mentioned, there's a lot of people who are of different age ranges and have different backgrounds and experiences. So if we were to talk to one of them, they might have a different reason why they're applying for the NYU program right now, as opposed to Kristen's reason. So, again, just going back to being gentle with yourself and trying to figure out what makes the most sense for you, I think that's the most important thing.
definitely, that's such a great point. And, you know, for me at a young age, I kind of decided that I want to see myself in different leadership positions within the dance world, or I potentially want to make my way into higher ed down the road as well. So knowing these goals from a young age, it just felt fit to kind of start in that path in that direction. But like Hannah said, there's no right or wrong time. It's different for everyone in your personal timeline.
Yeah. I think for what you're doing, though, it's a fantastic path for you. I can really see you thriving in higher ed eventually, whenever you decide to take that path potentially.
And I will admit too that it's kind of nice in my specific situation because I never really fell out of the groove of being a student and being in school. There's no wrong time to do it, but I do feel like those who haven't been in school for years initially maybe struggle to kind of get back into that groove and also even balance things like if they are still working full time. I mean, there's still some people in my program who are working their same outside jobs. So that can be a lot.
Absolutely. I've heard so many people say it's much harder to go back to school. So if you're in the groove of it and you kind of know what's expected of you and what it takes to get that degree, and just the amount of effort and work that goes into it, it's much easier, I feel like, to keep going on that same track than taking a break or even having a family. I can't imagine, you know, this is a little a side story about my life, but my mom actually has her master's and her PhD, and obviously not dance, but she also had my sister and I during her PhD program, and that was tough for her. She did complete her degree in a good amount of time, but I know that balancing her job and her kids and the degree, it's hard. It is, and I think you make a good point. Like going right into it after getting your first degree is a good idea.
Yeah. There's shout out to two amazing women in my program right now who are both pregnant and due to be having their babies soon. I don't know how they do it. They're literally like super women.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
All right, moving on to our next question. So, you kind of touched upon this, but are there more than one master's degree you can get in dance? Or is it just one specific degree that will allow you to do work in higher ed? Do you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, no, I do know what you're saying. And there are actually some differences. So, first off, just like a BFA and a BA, I kind of touched upon this, but you can get your MA, your master's, or your MFA, which is kind of the counterpart, the equivalent to a BFA, but in terms of graduate school. And these do mean different things. And even within an MA, you can get different MAs. So I'm getting like my master's in dance education, but you also could choose kind of a slightly different field if you wanted. I mean, there's things like I think you can just get your MA simply in dance and not dance education, or I know for sure you can get your MA in dance therapy because that's something that I had considered doing for quite some time. So different programs do exist for sure, but you do want to look at what that specific program will get you. So actually, when you are applying for jobs in higher education, most often they are looking for someone with a terminal degree, meaning that you need to have either an MFA or your doctorate. And so, to some extent, that does mean that my program is limiting. In terms of pursuing that, I would perhaps have to pursue my doctorate to go into some of the work that I might want to do down the road. But there's also kind of some loopholes, and it depends upon the school. So, a lot of programs might say that an MFA is required, but if you have an MA and you also have X amount of years of experience in your field, so whether it be some of it performing experience or teaching or research, all of those different things, those can kind of equate to having an MFA. So some schools are able to make that exception. That's not everywhere. And with just having a master's, there's potential to do things like adjunct and different roles without necessarily being a full-time professor with tenure. So just kind of asking yourself what it is that you want and if that degree is going to get you there, or if it's that stepping stone to getting you there. So if you want to receive your doctorate, well, you don't just jump from your BFA to your doctorate. There is that stepping stone of getting your master's. So yeah, I think just having the awareness of what all of these different things entail and what it is you're looking to do.
Interesting. I did just want to say, though, isn't it true if you want to be a professor of dance at a college or a university, you only need your master's degree? Is that right? I don't think a lot of programs require a doctorate. I could be wrong, but
Yes, a lot of places will accept just your master's, but like I said, it has to be a terminal degree, and an MA is not considered a terminal degree, whereas an MFA is, because an MFA is more intense. So an MFA usually takes about 3 years to complete, whereas my master's program is 1 year, although 3 semesters. It's kind of an accelerated program, or a lot of other master's programs might be a 2-year program. So they are putting in more time and completing more credits than just simply getting your MA. Not that getting your MA is not a valid or good thing either. So like actually, for example, NYU has this program, they call it their dual degree program, where those students are earning their MA and their MFA. And that's a 2-year program. I'm sorry, no, that's a 3-year program. But then you have my track that is just the 1 year. And then you have other master's students getting their MA as well at NYU who are getting a K through 12 certification to be able to work in New York City public schools. And theirs is a 2-year program. So like I said, a lot of other master's programs will be 2 years, but mine just happens to kind of be accelerated. But yeah, your MFA will usually be around 3 years. And so those students that are doing the dual degree at NYU take classes with us because they're working towards their MA, but then they also have a lot of technique classes and choreography and performing that will, over the 3 years, accumulate to their MFA.
So since you are only, I don't want to belittle again saying only earning your
Very
MA.
good.
No, if you want to be a full-time faculty member at a university and you need to have your MFA, do you see yourself going back to school to get that, or what's your game plan?
Yeah, I'm not really entirely sure. I mean, the tough thing about then if I were to go get my MFA is that a lot of times credits will not transfer. It's starting kind of from scratch again, which can be tough. I think I'd be more likely to pursue, honestly, my doctorate as opposed to going back to school for an MFA. But that would be also, if that were the case, very much down the line, not anytime soon. But I'm still, even though I have interest in higher education, I'm still working through. I have a couple things that I'm really interested in. And I honestly perhaps want to open my own studio or become like a ballet mistress or rehearsal director for like a pre-professional program somewhere. So I think if I do make my way into higher ed and I don't really see fit or really want to pursue my doctorate or further my education, I think that I would probably just work to do some like adjunct work on the side. So, teaching a couple classes with a university, but not having that full-time position.
Gotcha.
But that's also my 22-year-old self saying that. And I don't even know what I'm doing next year. So lots can change. Lots probably will change. So don't quote me on that. And we'll see where life takes me.
Definitely. There really isn't a set plan. I feel like we have goals and aspirations, but life makes its own decisions sometimes, I feel like, and other doors will close and other doors will open, and you just kind of have to go with the flow. So I'm sure whatever you end up doing will be a great path for you. Of course, of course. And I'm going to be excited to see it, whatever happens, because, my bestie friend right here. All right, so as we're going towards, Kristen just mentioned a doctorate, a PhD. Maybe we can both kind of talk about that briefly.
Sure.
Details for those of you that are interested. Personally, I think it would be super cool to be the doctor of dance. Like, oh, that has such a nice ring to it.
Yeah, it's pretty cool. The department chair of my program at NYU actually is right now pursuing her doctorate at Teachers College of Columbia University. So that's been kind of cool to hear a little bit of her experience and know too that even though she's in charge of this program at NYU, that she's also still a student and a lifelong learner looking to continue furthering herself in her career.
Yeah, that's super, super cool for you to see, I think. I also know someone who is currently getting his doctorate in dance at Ohio State University.
Yeah.
And I know they have a pretty, I would say, pretty well-known program.
No, it is definitely.
Yeah. Yep. And he's the only person I know that is getting his doctorate in dance, but I just think it's the coolest thing ever. Like, people who are going for that degree, especially in dance, it's like, wow, I don't know many people doing it. And it's just so interesting. And I don't know, I aspire to be like them, you know?
I think that people sometimes might think that it's silly too and not really realize why a dancer might choose to do that, but it's totally a very valid and honorable thing to do. I mean, that is a lot of schooling. I mean, you've got your undergrad, you've got your master's, and then, I mean, most doctoral programs are only part-time or low residency because people are working at the same time. And so it can take about 5 to 7 years to complete. That's a lot.
Wow, that's
And
cool.
that takes a lot of commitment and a lot of hard work and perseverance. It's not something easy. And not that my master's program is easy by any means, but a lot more people can push through a 1 year program, but to push through 5 to 7 more years, that is a huge endeavor.
Yeah, it's quite the undertaking, especially as you're saying, when you have other things going on in your life too that you have to attend to. And
Hmm.
again, I feel when someone is ready to pursue their doctorate, they are probably at a different stage in life. Probably not just out of undergrad or right out of their master's. You know, they're probably having a family or just doing other things that they have to tend to.
Definitely. Yeah, you're right on point with that.
Yeah, so I guess I'm curious as to, and you might know this a little bit more too, Kristen, but when you get your PhD in dance, is it primarily just a research component, or do you know if it has to, or if it has like some dancing and teaching component as well?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I did a little research myself because, taking this one step at a time, I've learned a lot more about master's programs through my experience, but have not experienced a doctoral program by any means. So just some basic kind of Google searches. I read online that PhD graduates pursue careers in artistic direction, choreography and performance, as well as advocacy, dance administration, entrepreneurship, teaching in higher ed, research, and writing. So I think it's really an all inclusive thing in terms of what you can go out and do with it and what people do go out and do with it. But I would say, and I could be wrong, but I would say that is probably a lot more just heavy on the research component and, you know, writing your dissertation and all of that. So really becoming a leader in the field and making these discoveries would be, I think, more of the direction it is than, here we are in our modern technique class, like, you
Yeah.
know.
Yeah.
And of course, dance though, there's even in my quote unquote academic classes this year at NYU, we even will, just throw our chairs aside for a second and stand up and start moving because it's all related, it's all interconnected. But I would say it's definitely more research oriented.
Yeah. And again, talking about how my mom has her PhD, she would joke about how it was literally writing a book. Her dissertation was a book.
Mm-hmm.
And like, wow, that is a huge, huge endeavor. So
Mm-hmm.
I definitely see how getting your doctorate is more like research heavy.
Yeah. And honestly, and this is not to say all, but if you look at some of the different kind of like dance textbooks and journals and articles and things we used during our undergrad for different papers we wrote or just a required reading for a class, and that carries on over then into my master's, a lot of those different individuals that have written those pieces of works have gone through that kind of education. So yeah.
All right, well, that kind of concludes my questions for you. Do you have anything else you want to mention about getting your master's or your PhD in dance, Kristen?
Honestly, I think we covered most of the bases. I would just say that there's a lot of benefit to it. No one should feel pressured to have to go about and get a degree like this, but I would say also it does give you an edge in the field in terms of job opportunities, and depending on what you're looking for, more and more jobs nowadays are looking for some of these credentials. However, once again, like, you should want to go to grad school if that's something you're going to do. You shouldn't just be going for the sake of going or to get the title, because it's a waste of your time, it's a waste of your money if you're not going to be fully invested. So just doing what's right for you, and only doing so if it's something you're truly passionate about and you feel like that will help further you in your career.
Great advice. I also just want to say, going off of that, there are so many things you can do in the dance field.
Mm-hmm.
So even if it isn't higher ed, or excuse me, higher degrees in the field, that doesn't mean that you won't be extremely involved and invested, and that's still just as important too as getting those degrees. It's really about what you want and what you're looking for. So in conclusion, I just want to thank you all for listening to our part 3 of our college dance series, and please check back for more episodes in the next coming weeks. And it's been so fun for us to chat and to kind of talk about our lives in dance. So thank you.
Yes, I hope we really helped you guys out a little bit.
If you have any other questions about master's degrees or undergrad or doctorate degrees, feel free to email us or reach out to us personally at our email. Thank you so much and have a great day.
Thank you, everyone. Bye.
Bye. Thanks for tuning in to Abundance. We appreciate your support. We hope to have PK'd your interest. Feel free to contact us at abundancepodcast5678@gmail.com and give us feedback on what you'd like to hear. That is abundance without parentheses. Go dance yourself silly. Bye for now.
A special thank you to Richard D. Fiore for our lovely podcast tune, and my wonderful boyfriend, Matt Mellish, for our cover art.